One of your characters, Marion, is a middle-aged writer who is challenged to get a tattoo. And her wilder sister, Daria, tells her first to go paint her fingernails a vibrant purple and says if she can't handle the attention she gets from that, she'll probably not do well with a tattoo. In honor of our little chat, I have painted my fingernails purple. Do you think it's easier to blend into a change like this rather than going in feet first? And most importantly, what kind of character research did you do for this?
Well, I do have an outstanding coupon for a tattoo from my daughter that she gave me for my birthday 2 years ago. So I'm even worse than Marion. I have not yet gotten mine. I can't quite figure out what it's supposed to say, mine. We're getting close.
Very good.
And but it was real. I did actually go to a tattoo conference, and it was a surreal event. You know, very much like entering Plato's cave or something. It just was hot, sweaty, incredibly loud. You know, pounding music, screaming needles. All these people with these really scary tattoos, and some that were kind of sweet. And it, you know, it was just. I was completely out of my depth and loving it. It was so much fun. So, you know, reading all the books about tattoos and watching all the YouTube videos about the tattoo parlors, and it was fun. I had a great time researching that part.
Well, I actually did get a tattoo before we left, and I can tell you the reason they play that pounding music is to distract you from the pounding in your skin.
That makes great sense.
It actually works, believe it or not. So I did read that you actually rafted down the Colorado River as part of the research for this book. Was this something that you always wanted to do, or did you just do it for your character? And as like a part B to that question, what is the strangest thing you've ever done to research a character or a plot point?
Gosh, good question. Well, so I actually went down the Grand Canyon with my family before I started writing this book. It was one of the other reasons to write it. So one of the great things about being a writer is that when something happens in your life that is unsettling or unusual, killing crabs, for example, was such an amazing experience. How could I not write about it? And thus we have the School of Essential Ingredients. I went down the Grand Canyon, not my idea. Absolutely not my idea. I was bullied into it, basically. My husband and kids, we'd been invited to go on this trip with all of these wonderful outward bound instructors who completely know what they're doing. And then we were invited along because we were friends, but I really didn't want to go. I mean, I was very much like Kate in that regard. I really didn't want to go. And then my husband and kids said, well, we're going. And I'm a really protective mom. There's no way I'm going to let my kids go down the Grand Canyon without me. So I went. And it was terrifying, exhilarating, life-changing. I can't even tell you what a different person I was coming out of that river than when I went in.
Wow.
But again, it was one of these things where I just said, okay, at some point in my life, I get to use this, you know. And so it's repurposed. I haven't had breast cancer. I'm not a survivor. I'm not Kate. But many of the things I experienced then I could re-see through her eyes, and it was a really fascinating experience.
Oh, wow. So we talked briefly about this earlier, about other book clubs talking about issuing the challenges. If this idea of issuing challenges to our friends were to take off in a viral kind of way, not that we're advocating anyone to do anything outside of their comfort zones, well, what kind of guidelines do you think would work best? I know we talked a little bit about, you know, just going around the circle and telling your friends without having the, you know, the rule that you had to do it. But, I mean, really, what kind of guidelines would you set up around something like that?
Well, I think, I mean, and it really depends on the group. I mean, I've been to book clubs that have been meeting together for 30 years, or groups of women friends. It wouldn't have to be a book club.
Right.
But, you know, they've been together for a long, long time, and they know each other really well. I've been in other groups where they've come together fairly recently because they are just interested in books, and this is a way to meet people. And so it really, you have to know your group, I think, and you have to know the people in your group. It might be more appropriate to have one person be assigning them the way it is in the book. It might be that everyone writes them down anonymously and you choose the one you want to do, or you say you're going to do all of them. I met a woman recently who was doing what she called the 40 and 40. So in her 40th year, she wanted to do 40 new things she'd never done before. And when I met her, she was on number 37. She'd just gotten back from Hawaii, and it was great. She said, you can knock off a whole ton of them in Hawaii because windsurfing and parasailing and, surfing and all this stuff. So, I would say that the fun thing would be not to feel lockstep. Same way in School of Essential Ingredients, I said, don't feel tied to recipes. Don't feel tied to any particular structure. Figure out what works for you all, and be honest. Don't make it something that works for you all because that's safer,
right,
or makes you feel more comfortable necessarily. Look at what actually might give you the best experience.
But even something small like the purple fingernails, someone wearing that for a week, something that's totally out of the norm for them, issuing those kinds of challenges on a regular basis, I think, might be interesting too. So I also have a friend who's doing a 60 by 60. She finishes up this November on her 60th birthday, and it just is amazing. I mean, she's swung on a trapeze. She's going to see orangutans and wherever, and it's just a fantastic. But she's also doing smaller things like learning to do a side plank in yoga for 60 seconds. I mean, it's a variety of things, and it's really inspiring to watch someone do something like that.
Yes, it is.
So, one question for our, we have many readers on the blog who are published or aspiring writers. The blog is all about living your dream, whether it's travel or something else, and we do have a disproportionate number of writers in our group. So now that you've published your second novel and fourth book, you're working full-time as a writer. One thing that we talk about a lot on the blog is your dream, is the actuality of your dream. How is it different from what you thought it was going to be? On our trip, our dream it's actually better than I thought it was going to be, and I find that very hard to believe. I really thought that it couldn't be, but it is in ways that I didn't even imagine. Now there are some ways it's also harder, but again, overall. So is the life of a writer what you imagined it would be back when you had a regular job, raising your children and all of that? How is your dream working out as a reality?
Well, first off, I never really truly believed I'd get to do it. That was what other people did, and it was what I'd wanted since the time I was little. But the idea that I would get to do it was like a movie. That was a fantasy, and to have that come true. I mean, my first novel was published 2 months before my 50th birthday, wow. And so for me, I treasure this experience in a way that I probably wouldn't have if it had happened when I was 30. Right. Because I've worked for it, and I put in a lot of years of having it be the thing on the side or be the thing that wasn't working or whatever. So there was, I tell people I have boxes of rejections in the basement before I figured out how it was that I wrote and what made sense for me. And the other thing that's surprising to me is I was always brought up on that myth that, the real writer either is Jack Kerouac and sits down with the roll of paper towels and just types it out and never edits, and also that myth of the writer being the person who gets up at 4 a.m. and writes until 8 and, applies the butt to the chair and doesn't get up until it's done. Well, I'm neither of those people. And it has been a tremendous relief to be part of a writing community and to realize that everybody writes differently. Mm-hmm. And I write in images. I don't write beginning, middle, end. When I'm writing a book right now, I'm writing a new book. I have 4 of the stories finished because I'm now in a writing group, and they say, could you try to write chronologically? Just for us. It would be easier, But the reality is I have parts of 3 others, and they all kind of, they kind of move and come into each other. And I shift between them. And as they grow and grow into each other, they are changing each other. And so while I'm a very controlled and controlling person, there is this whole uncontrollable aspect to it that has been really educational for me and fascinating. And also means that I don't write from 4 to 8 in the morning. I write when it makes sense. When the image pops up, I sit down and write it down. And sometimes I'm sitting down on a curb on a street and writing it down, or talking into my iPhone. Now I look a little less crazy because I can talk into my iPhone.
Oh, you live in Seattle. Nobody thinks you're crazy.
It helps. It helps, yes.
So speaking of the other novel that you're working on, can you tell us a little bit about it, or is it top secret?
It is, well, the first two were easier to kind of explain in 2 sentences. This one, I think the only way I can explain it is it's a series of accidental kindnesses and misperceptions. It's like watching a series of dominoes tipping. One person tips the next person, tips the next person, tips the next. And I'm having a lot of fun with this idea that sometimes it's strangers or people we don't know that kind of tip us in the right direction. And lots of times it's the people that we know best who are completely misunderstanding us and what we need. And so it's these two things running kind of counter to each other, but in the end, working almost in the same direction. So it's been and the other little thing I can tell you is that there are a couple of characters from School of Essential Ingredients that are sneaking back in.
Oh,
so,
that's neat. That's neat.
It's fun. Oh, and good news, which is we just had the options for the film rights for School of Essential Ingredients taken. So we may get a movie out of that one.
Wow. Well, just let me know what part you want me to play.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Congratulations. That must be, wow.
It's a wonderful thing. The book is so visual, and it would be lovely to see it done right. So
yeah, I can absolutely see that. I wish I would have known that at the start. We could have spent the whole call trying to imagine which actresses and actors could play in the movie.
Well, it was interesting. I was just in LA doing the book tour for Joy for Beginners, and there was a acting company that did a sort of on-stage reading, 4 different actresses reading parts from 4 of the different stories. Mm-hmm. And it was fascinating to watch how they interpreted characters that I've been living with for 2.5 years. And sometimes they would see things that I hadn't seen or hadn't meant, but it's all in the words. It made perfect sense. Sometimes, I thought, oh, that's not how I meant that character, but then I learned something else. And other times it was spot on, exactly the way I would have done it. So it was, and I learned a lot about reading aloud and how to kind of bring more drama into it and act the parts out more. It was really fun.
Well, you talked earlier about being a little bit more of a controlled and controlling person. How are you going to feel when your book is turned over to someone else to make into a movie? I mean, what if they pick someone that you hate, or
well, as long as they don't turn Lillian into a serial killer, I think I'm going to be okay.
I think she's a serial killer of crabs.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am going to let everyone know right now that you can get both books, The School of Essential Ingredients, which I loved, as well as the new book, Joy for Beginners, which I also loved, pretty much in all major bookstores, as well as through the ebooks through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Chapters, all of those. And I think I read that The School of Essential Ingredients is in 21 different countries now. Is that right? I think
we're up to 25.
25.
Hungary. Okay. So, there you are. Hungary and the Czech Republic. Who would have thought?
Well, as we travel through, I'll go to bookstores, and if I see them, I'll take a picture on the bookshelf and send it to you. Well, thank you very much, Erica, for being with us. I know that our readers are going to love hearing about the book and about the challenges. And who knows, maybe we'll start something on the blog about issuing challenges to each other, and we'll let you know how it goes.
Oh, that would be great.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.